Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF, Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. A couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started here. If you're watching us on Facebook and want us to see your comments in our chat here, please go over to streamyard.com/Facebook. You can register there. It's free, and we'll be able to interact with you on our chat page. And also, we start our baseball coverage tonight with South Burbs Hitmen, and the special guest there is going to be the in-stadium announcer for the Chicago White Sox, so that should be a fantastic show. Let me bring in the man of the hour. He is, of course, Greg Gabriel. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you, Aldo?
Oh, fantastic. Can't wait to hear your interview with your special guest.
Yeah, we got a good one coming on today. A friend of mine, known probably 10, 12 years, probably closer to 12, but really got to know him 5 years ago as we both worked in the XFL together starting in the spring of 2019. And Eric Galko did an unbelievable job. He was the league director of player personnel. I was the DC director of player personnel, but basically it was his job to bring all these players together. We had tryout camps at all the league cities. He had to sort through thousands of names, and the job he did was like unbelievable. And I think we became pretty close through that. And then, and part of the reason was we had that previous relationship, but the other part is that he knew me. He didn't know a lot of the other player personnel directors, so we bounce things off each other a lot and really become really good friends. Since that XFL 2020 folded, he has taken over the East-West Shrine game, which long ago, that many people don't know, was the game. And then it just kind of fell apart for whatever reason. Eric's been running it for 3 years now, brought it back to where it should be, and it will keep getting better. Just done a tremendous job. So let's bring in Eric Galko.
And I got to tell you, from my control room, I can see his face as you're introducing, and he's wiping away the tears.
What an intro, Greg. I appreciate it, Greg. Thank you so much for saying that, too. And it's a hell of an intro. I appreciate that.
Just remember to send me the check.
Guys, have fun. I'll pop back in a little while.
So you and I always, what's going on, and you and I talk periodically. Let's hit the big thing. What's your take on the Justin Fields trade?
Yeah, I think I wasn't surprised, obviously, when it happened. I think you and I talked about kind of the different paths the Bears could go down, right? And the fact that, I don't think it's crazy to say that it was always well known the first overall pick had a heck of a lot more value than Justin Fields did, right? You want to get the first pick, you're going to get 3 first-round picks. For Fields. If you got, a top 100 pick, that was going to be a good thing. So the question was always, would it make a lot of sense? And I was surprised they waited this long. I think that's one of the questions we'll maybe learn in hindsight is if they had made a move earlier, could they have gotten more? That's a question that only, Ryan Poles may know and the industry may know and the teams that were interested in him as well, too, because certainly teams had interest in him, too. But I think overall it wasn't going to make sense having a quarterback at 1 and Justin in the same room, and whether they traded him too late or whether they traded him to a team where he can be a great fit. Because honestly, for Justin's purpose, it's an awesome fit behind Russell Wilson for a year. Russell Wilson there on kind of on a minimum deal, and hopefully he's their long-term quarterback, but there's no really guarantee beyond year 1. Fields can kind of reset a little bit. We've seen in the past guys like Mitch Trubisky sometimes not playing for a year just increases your value even more. So I think Justin's in a great spot long-term, and I think we'll probably all surprised the Bears only got a 6th round pick for him, but I think it had to be moved, and whether it was too late or right time as well too, it's time to move on for the Bears fans. Look towards Caleb Williams or whoever they may take with their first round pick.
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, and I've given a lot of thought, and I've thought this before. I don't think the Bears handled it right. Going back to their first postseason presser, so a week after the season ended, and they knew they had the first pick, and they let the press dictate some things as far as automatic assumption that Fields was going to be out the door. They're going to draft a quarterback, and I think they handled it wrong. They just should have said, he's our quarterback. We'll make a decision with what we're going to do somewhere between now and the draft. But the way they answered it, and then again at the combine, they let the door open. He's gone. So right away that the value goes down. You're getting rid of him. Why should I pay you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and I think it's a really interesting take too, because I go back to the idea of trading early. A year ago, or in season last year, the Niners traded Trey Lance, and they got a 4th round pick for him, right? And that was probably a very early trade. They got good return on him. I think I think Trey Lance is super talented. I think getting Fields for less than Trey Lance feels crazy to me, right? And I think it's more about timing situation too. So to your point, if you're always going to move on, maybe earlier. But again, I think the Bears maybe still had questions. Maybe weren't positive he wasn't the guy for a long time either. I don't really quite know where their thought process was, but I do think that getting a 6th round pick for Justin Fields can't feel great in the building. But obviously it was time to move on.
Well, there is a condition involved. If he plays 51% of the plays, it's a 4th. But we both know conditional trades have a way of getting manipulated very easily.
Right.
Especially if you get into like week 14 and the guy's at 60%, it's like, oh, I think we got to see what the other guy can do. So just so you don't have to pay that extra capital.
Yeah. I mean, Greg, I'll ask you, and I was surprised by this. I would, if you had told me Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, and Justin Fields were all going to get traded this offseason, and Fields would have the lowest return. I mean, how surprising. Again, I think a lot of it is because they were the last to make the trade too. But that was the surprising part to me is that, I think Pickett probably can fit in a lot of different situations as a true backup, probably his destiny anyways, whereas Justin and Ridder maybe are a little more, you got to design your offense around him. But are you surprised by Fields getting the lowest return of those 4 guys? Because I was.
Yeah. Part of it is, and Rappaport came out with it yesterday, I'm sure you saw it, that the front office, particularly Ryan Poles, tried to work with Justin, and he turned down 4 other offers that were supposedly better. Now, that's after the fact. Is it really? Who knows? And we'll never know. But they did want to place him to a place where he felt he would have a legitimate chance of winning. My personal feeling is I don't think it's that hard to beat out Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson to me is his best days are like 3 years ago. But still, he's a veteran. He's savvy. But they're both going to be in a new offense. So it'll be interesting how it plays out. Now, starting out when the offseason program starts in another month, Wilson will be number 1. That doesn't mean he's going to be number 1 when the opening game is, that first week in September.
Yeah, I think for Pittsburgh, it's interesting because I think all these trades for Kenny Pickett, the Eagles were going to be a team I had circled for a day 2 or early day 3 quarterback in the draft. The Steelers with Russell Wilson, a team I thought, all right, at the moment, Kenny Pickett, maybe they're a day 2, day 3 quarterback team. The Arizona Cardinals, right? Kyler Murray, maybe you want to look at a backup for him too. So all these teams that could be looking for day 2 or day 3 quarterbacks have already moved off them. So now I think one of the cool things, non-Bears related, that cool things interesting I'm looking at is who's taking a quarterback on day 2 of the draft. And I think the idea of the day 2 quarterback is probably going away, just because if you think a guy's a guy, you take him in the top 10 as early as possible. And if you don't think he's a guy, then why waste a day 2 pick on him? So I think it's probably an interesting dynamic too, is that there's not a lot of teams out there now besides maybe the Broncos, if they don't move up in the draft, that are going to say, hey, we need to get a guy like a Bo Nix or Michael Penix or whoever else on day 2 of the draft too. So one of the interesting domino effects is that not a lot of teams need a developmental backup the way the Pittsburgh Steelers got Justin Fields.
Well, I've always felt that in the draft that if you don't take a quarterback early, you're going to steal one late. Because when you get into that day 2, beginning of day 3, you got to try. There's a quarterback that you like. You got a good grade on him versus a position player that you know is going to play now, or the quarterback is going to be a backup. And he's going to sit on the bench. So it's like, I think I'm going to take the position player because he's going to help us today. Even though, and so now your quarterbacks fall and they don't deserve to fall. It's just the way it is.
Yep. No doubt. And I think the other part too for the Bears, obviously looks like they're going to take, I mean, I'm not breaking news here. They're going to take a quarterback first overall or with their first pick. But do they, and this may be a question for you and people that follow it more too. Is Tyson Bagent the long-term QB2, QB3? And if these quarterbacks start falling in the draft, which I think they will, I think people will be surprised that if we have more than one day 2 quarterback, I'll be surprised. We'll have 4 go in the top 6 picks and then maybe 0 on day 2. And if there's a couple quarterbacks there in the 4th, 5th round, do the Bears, I know they have a lot of draft picks right now.
They don't have any
do
picks
they consider
there.
I know. I mean, do they consider a Shanahan, RG3, Kirk Cousins situations too? Because again, if team needs a quarterback, it's kind of a good year to double dip or get a guy on day 3 as well too. So
as it stands right now, they got 4 picks. So and none after the 4th round. So you got 2 in the 1st, 1 in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, and that's it. So and they got needs to fill. So it's going to be crazy. I would think they're going to try to trade out a 9 a little bit, but in order to pick up a 2, which they could use badly, you got to go back about 8, 9 spots. And then when you look at who's there, you go, why would they move up? But, you're not going to know that until draft day.
Yep. One of the benefits, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, one of the benefits that I think the Bears have that other teams that are trying to add in free agency don't quite have yet is they've done a pretty good job on day 3 and undrafted free agency in the draft. And it's interesting because you don't really appreciate that in season sometimes, but you appreciate it in free agency when you're like, actually, we don't have a lot of backup player needs, right? Getting a guy like Jack Sanborn as an undrafted free agent is so valuable because he is not your starter. He's your main rotation guy as well too. And you don't have to add a $3-4 million veteran in that spot either. Or you could say, hey, we could add a 4th linebacker later on as well too. So one of the benefits I think the Bears have is hitting on not only the Braxton Joneses, but a lot of guys who are core backups at a lot of key spots. And now the Bears can say, hey, we really have 3 needs we'd love to address in the draft. We address 2. That'd be great too. So I think they certainly need more draft picks. They're still a rebuilding team. But at least from my point of view, I think Poles in that front office done a good job of building a lot of key depth with late round picks and undrafted free agents. And again, other teams haven't. And that's why they're not to be a negative here, the Minnesota Vikings maybe haven't done as well on day 3 of the draft. And they've had a lot of great players. And now they have trade up for a quarterback, but their depth at offensive line, defensive line, defensive back is pretty weak that if they have an injury or 2, the Bears can take those injuries and maybe the Vikings can't. So very interesting dichotomy between those 2 teams who both feel they're a quarterback away and maybe different perspectives coming into the draft this year.
So let's switch gears a little bit, being that you run the East-West game and I get to do a little help with you on that, which I really enjoy. But you had a pretty good crop of players this year.
Yeah.
Probably better. You're not going to get the 1st round pick like you had last year. But I'll tell you the one I really like, and you tell me, I think he's going to the 2nd, but Mo Kamara, where do you think he goes?
Yeah. I think he's interesting because he's a little bit going to depend on the scheme. But I mean, hey, uber productive as an edge rusher. If you're productive and you test well, that's all that matters, right? We always internally talk about creators and preventers positions, right? Receivers and edge rushers are creator positions. They can have 45 bad plays in the game, but if they have 5 really good plays, and as an edge rusher, those 5 plays are 3 sacks and 2 extra pressures, that's a huge, huge advantage. I think Mo Kamara can run a little bit hot and cold sometimes, but tested well, speed rusher. He's going to go in the top 3-4 rounds for sure. Thought he had a great week of practice. And again, I think sometimes all-star game stuff can get overrated, but during that week, he showed against NFL offensive tackles, he can win with his 2 or 3 best moves, which as an edge rusher in the NFL early on, that's all he's going to need to do to be successful too. So I think one of our best edge rushers for sure is Mo Kamara, and he'll be a top 100 pick.
Yeah, and I personally think he's going to be higher, and only because there's not a strong edge class. Like you got 4 guys that are going in the 1st round that are really good players. Yeah. After that, there's a drop off. And he is, I'll tell you who my comp is, and you tell me if you agree, but Brandon Graham with the Eagles. When you look at their measurables, coming out, They're the exact same height. Their arm length is the exact same. Brandon Graham was about 10 pounds heavier, but Mo was about 0.2 of a second faster, more explosive, and actually stronger. So to me, and Graham's now going into his 15th year now. Remains to be seen if Mo's going to do that. But to me, that's the comp. You get in the right, but you got to go to the right team.
Yeah. Yep. And that's where Graham was, right? Graham, if he goes to the wrong team, he's probably playing 3-4 years.
But he went the first
right?
round. Kamara's not going in the first round, but he's been a hell of a player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing they have in common, too, is the motor. Kamara's motor is nonstop. Even if he loses against, he tries to counter inside, doesn't quite work out. He's going to keep going as well. So Brandon Graham always had at Michigan and in the NFL for a long time as well, too, is that, hey, even if you lose that first rep, he's not going to be a liability. One thing a lot of speed rushers, I think at the college level, and sometimes in the NFL they do it as well, is when they lose that rep, when it's a third and long, whatever else, they're just done. And in today's NFL, you can't just give up the C gap or the outside edge if you lose a pass rush anymore, because you'll have any quarterback in the league now run around you and pick up 15 yards. So guys like Brandon Graham, they'd be aggressive and they'd be, able to go inside and outside and counter rush and adapt a little bit. But Brandon Graham's motor and his, I think, football IQ never let a huge gap for a quarterback be available to us. But Mo Kamara did a great job as well in college. I think he has that high-low football IQ. For Mo, I've talked to Mo a lot this draft process. And whenever I talk to him, he's like, what else can I do? What else can I show teams? What else should I be prepared for this too? And he wants to be great in ways that, I love all of our Shrine Bowl players equally, but he's unique in a way that only 5 or 6 guys have really been as proactive. What else can I do to be successful in this draft process? So that's a good sign that he knows he needs to be at his best at all times, and I think he's going to be.
Well, his pro day is today, isn't it?
Today or tomorrow? No, today. You're right. Today,
yeah,
March
15th, I think you
last night.
Tweeted out. I don't know if you do the East-West tweets or somebody does it for you, but I think there was something about an hour ago about.
Yeah, someone for me. Thankfully, I can't manage that many social media. I'm not the Twitter guy you are. I barely tweet anymore these days.
I'm an asshole on
someone
Twitter.
Else
You know that. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. So who else do you like to go?
Yeah.
Say
early.
day
Yeah,
two?
I mean, we had a couple guys that weren't 100% healthy. That'll go day 2. Jonathan Brooks at Texas, obviously a guy we had come interview only after his injury in November. He'll be a round 2 pick. JT Sanders at Texas also wasn't 100% healthy. Leonard Taylor at Miami. He'll be a day 2 pick all day and probably a round 2 pick. Some teams really like him. He's a D tackle. Edrin Cooper, linebacker of A&M. He was in the Shrine Bowl. He'll be probably the first linebacker off the board. But 2 guys that, when teams ask me who I think will be the 2 top guys or 2 of the top guys, really 3. One is Malik Washington, receiver at Virginia, had 120 catches, which is saying a lot. He tested incredibly well, better than I think NFL teams thought. A lot of teams thought he'd be a 4.5, maybe low 4.6 guy, hits the mid 4.4s of the combine. He, like Mo Kamara, incredibly high character. I did probably 5 rounds of interview prep with him. And this is a kid you meet, you talk to him for 5 minutes and you're like, perfect, done. I'm over this character right up. And he wants to be great so bad too. So he jumps out. He'll be a day 2 pick. I've told teams if he's a 2nd round pick or a 5th round pick, he's catching 50, 60 balls next year. So you take him where you want to take him, but he's going to be that kind of player.
He can return kicks for you and be a slot receiver.
Yep.
It's a no-brainer.
Quarterback in high school. Yeah, quarterback in high school. Like he checks every box. And again, you meet the kid for 5 minutes and you're like, got to have this guy in my locker room. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, a safety from Texas Tech. He's a little bit like people talk about Mikey Sanders still at Michigan, who's a darn good player as well. And he'll be a 2nd round pick, probably an early one. But Taylor Demerson, a little bit similar when being a nickel safety, hybrid kind of player, but high character superstar, tested incredibly well, can play corner, can play outside corner in a pinch, can play free safety. He'll be a guy that teams covet. And I think once Mikey Sandersville goes and the top 40 picks, I think he'll be the next kind of slot nickel guy. He'll be a 2nd, 3rd round pick. And then Mason McCormick, offensive lineman from South Dakota State. A year ago, we had a player, Juice Scruggs from Penn State, who had one of, if not really one of, in my 20 years doing this, one of the best offensive line performances in any all-star game ever was Juice Scruggs last year. Did lose a rep and dominated some really good players, including Kobe Turner, who won Defensive Rookie of the Year almost. And he ended up going 2nd round because of that. And this year, Mason McCormick wasn't quite as dominant as Juice, but pretty close to it. And also he tested as well as guys like Quinn Miners, another small school player who went early third round. Has been a great NFL player now for the last 6-7 years too. So he's going to go somewhere on round 2. Those are the 3 guys the NFL teams are most excited about. And while they may limit something, whether it's size or being a small school player, those are 3 guys that teams have told me, like, hey, we really want to get this guy. And if they're there in the early third round, which I'm not sure any 3 of those guys will be, they won't last very long.
You know, those are all solid guys. And it's a testament to you because a few years ago, the East-West didn't get players like that. And now you're getting them, you know, 2 years in a row, you put it together. And that's only going to help us.
Let's just say all 3 of those guys. All 3 of those guys, among many others, had options for All-Star games. I'll leave it there. So we're thankful for those guys to trust me and the Shrine Bowl to be there, and they had a great draft process so far. And again, they're really going to present. It's a privilege for me to really vouch for those 3 guys because all 3 of those players are incredible people, and they're going to be hell of NFL players.
Anything else you got on the draft?
On the draft, or just Shrine Bowl guys?
No, on the draft. Some feelings.
I'd be surprised. I think if just not because I've heard something, but it just feels like a Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze pairing is going to happen in Chicago. That feels like it's still going to happen even after Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. You know, Keenan's better in the slot. I think Rome's an outside guy. I know him and Caleb have talked quite a bit. So if Caleb's going to be the first overall pick, which I feel confident he will be, I think Rome makes a lot of sense for the Bears as well too.
I think one thing how he makes it to 9 though. That's the only thing.
I think it'll be close. It'll be close for sure. I think he'll get there, unless someone trades up to the Falcons spot, which the Falcons have talked to teams about moving down in the draft a little bit. But I think one of the fascinating things I've talked to a lot of teams about is, and we can leave it at this, is offensive tackle, especially really offensive line and receiver, is such a deep position group this year that a lot of questions are, hey, do we pass on that position earlier so we can get one in the late second round? Or are we trying to get too cute here and we should just take Olu Fashanu in the first round and not get a guy in the late second round as well too? So how teams handle the depth at offensive line and receiver will be fascinating to me, at least this year, because I think teams, now that you know how the teams work, right? They've kind of had their combine meetings or having some meetings right now. They'll do their April meetings. But when it comes to the grades versus the actual strategy, I think teams are definitely going to figure out, how do we handle receiver and offensive tackle? And then if we need a safety or a linebacker, how early we taking those guys, because it's not a great class, not really top heavy either too. So draft strategy wise, teams are figuring out those 2 things, because it's receiver and offensive line are deeper than, especially offensive line, I can ever remember. And safety linebacker probably as weak as I can ever remember too at the top. So that's what I think teams are going to figure out here the next few weeks before the draft.
Yeah, that's the way it always is. And then what's interesting is now you're getting the coaches involved, because they're working out players at the pro days, and they start to create love affairs with certain players. You know, they meet with them, they spend a lot of time with them. I got to have this guy. And then you start, you get into your April meetings and the coaches start jumping up on tables. And, part of the process is you got to please everybody, but you can't overrank a guy. You can't bring him up too much because a coach really loves him. At the same time, you can never give a coach a player that he doesn't want, because that guy will fail regardless.
Yep. That's the one thing people don't realize. When guys go earlier than they expect, 8 out of 10 times because a coach said, I want this guy, right? Oh, why? How'd that guy go third round? I can't believe that. You could probably trace it back to that coach. We got a pro day or meeting somebody there for sure too. So good call.
You got some news breaking or something, Aldo, that you're breaking in?
No, I figured it might be time for me to step in and get some questions answered from the chat, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Zach asks, Eric, what edge in this draft do you think would be a good fit for Chicago? And I will add to that, let's suppose that it's not a first round pick. Let's say it's Rome. So we're talking a day 3 pick.
No, you're talking third round.
Third round, 4th round. Yes. Okay.
It's funny because I went to the board of the day, and it really drops off after these first couple guys in a way that I think a lot of guys that might go day 2 wouldn't go day 2 otherwise. And I think if you're looking for an edge rusher in the 3rd round or even the 5th round, you probably should lower expectations and say, I'm not going to find a starter there, and just find a really good rotational player. A couple guys that jump out that can fit the Bear scheme. One, Nelson Caesar of Houston, kind of a little bit undersized for what they want to do, but I think he's a high motor, high energy guy. He'll be there in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round area. Solomon Byrd of USC, another taller, well-built guy, maybe a better fit for the Bears scheme. He'll be there in that round 4, round 5 too. So I think when you're looking, when you're building a roster and you're looking at day 2, day 3 picks, you're not looking for starters. If you're looking for starters, you're going to squint too hard and probably take a bad player. You're better off saying, hey, we need a 3rd edge rusher, 4th edge rusher. And those are 2 guys that I like a lot in that late 2nd or late day 2, early day 3 area.
Barrelissimo, who has his own YouTube channel and crunches a lot of tape, he asks you, Christian Boyd is a great developmental 1-3 tech for him. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much developmental he is. A year ago at the Shrine Bowl, we had a defensive tackle who was a non-combine guy named Kobe Turner, who went 3rd round and ended up being, again, runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And every team's asked me all year, who's this year's Kobe Turner? And I'm like, well, he's not going to be another one of those guys. But Christian Boyd's a good chance to be that non-combine guy. He was pretty unanimous, the biggest combine snub among teams I talked to. He's going to go 3rd, 4th round. And again, don't be surprised with his motor, his active hands, the way he dominated when he had a good competition in season at the Shrine Bowl, that he'll be a 3rd, 4th round pick. And he'll probably have 4 or 5 sacks next year as a rookie. I think that's how good Christian Boyd can be.
Bear Truth 9 wants to know if we pass on a wide receiver in the 1st round, what are some guys we may look at in the 3rd round? This is a deep class at wide receiver.
It's a very deep class. I'm not sure who's exactly going to be there that jumps out to me as saying, hey, this is a guy that I think teams are going to be super bullish on. A couple guys that jump out. If Malachi Corley is there, I think he'd be an awesome fit in the 3rd round. I think he's a fantastic player, super talented. Jamari Thrash of Louisville. Another guy that could play outside receiver for them. They need an outside guy to kind of leave Keenan Allen and or DJ Moore to play some slot and Z. Cornelius Johnson of Michigan might be a 3rd, 4th, 5th round option who played at a high level at Michigan, super good athlete, big, tall guy as well, more of a 4th, 5th round pick kind of guy. So they'll have some options. But again, if you're looking for somewhere on day 2, day 3, you can't be expecting a guy to come in and catch 40-50 balls next year. It's hard to find those guys that late.
And I apologize if you talked with Greg about this player. I may have missed it while I was multitasking back here, but you on your Twitter account, you talked about Qwan'tez Stiggers. And why don't you tell us the story of this young man?
Yeah. First off, love that it says college none, because that is what it is. Didn't play college football. And Nick Baumgardner at The Athletic did a great feature on Qwan'tez. One of, I think, many people want to write between now and the draft. He was going to enter college in 2020. Pandemic kind of ended this college season. He was going to play at Division II Lane College. Couldn't find a new home for 2021 for college-wise. And then in 2022, his actually mom encouraged him and signed him up for the fan-controlled football league, an arena-based league. Played there, had like 3 interceptions in the first 2 games. Played so well that the Toronto Argonauts gave him a tryout and came in to be their last guy on their training camp roster. And he went from the last guy they signed, Vince Magri, their assistant GM there, was the one who actually signed them, ended up starting, winning CFL Rookie of the Year his first year. This is a player that never played college football, and the only reason he's in the draft is because he never went through a draft process. So I've always joked with people that, like, hey, when I was at Delaware as a flag football quarterback, I technically could have been drafted after 4 years. I didn't, and then after that, I get signed as a free agent now. Qwuantrezz Stiggers never had that chance to be a part of a draft process, so every team had a chance to draft him. So the NFL League office told NFL teams, hey, you can't sign him as a free agent. He's got to go through the draft. And we learned that, watched the film, talked to Qwuantrezz. Lucky to have him at the Shrine Bowl this year. He came in, showed that he had been a pro for the last year, super impressive, asked the right questions. He's talking Steve Smith's ear off about a half hour, asking for all the reasons to be a great player. And oh, by the way, he dominated all week long in the practice field as well, too. So he's going to go from fan-controlled football league, CFL, to not only being an NFL player, he'll be a draft pick. And don't be surprised if he ends up going 3rd, 4th round. Tested well at his pro day, impressed in the draft process. He's going to be a hell of a story all draft weekend long.
Well, thank you, Eric. Greg, it's all yours.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a half hour. We said to keep you half. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. I got some more names for you. And you got the pro day stuff I sent yesterday, right? I do. All the pro day stuff up to date too now. So we're 2 weeks into pro days, and I'll be at about 3-4 pro days this week myself too. So still a busy time of year. To appreciate you guys. I'll be all ones in Massachusetts. I'll be at UConn. We had Jackson Mitchell at UConn. Holy Cross, we had 2 players, and then Boston College, we had Christian Mahogany there as well too. So I'll be there
testing and also rooting our guys on a little bit. So I'm a little biased, and hopefully my stopwatch will be fast for those guys for sure. So
hey,
don't trust my numbers.
You like them, you time them faster.
Don't trust my numbers.
I get my next group of players from that. I'll get it probably Sunday, and I'll just send it on to you.
Look forward to it. Appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, buddy.
He is Eric Galko. You can find him at Eric Galko on the X Machine. And great interview, Greg. You could tell Eric has gone to like either media training or he's just a natural. He does such a good job.
You know what? He's a very, very, very intelligent guy. He's got a law degree. You know, so he's been to law school. I think, did he go to Penn State Law School? Not sure what law school he went to. I know he went to Penn State undergrad. But he's or I think it was Penn State Law School, but very, very intelligent guy, very organized guy. And like I said, the job he did in the XFL was just a remarkable job. Because, I mean, we put a league together in a matter of months from nothing. And a lot of that was all him.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, let's get to the big story of the week, which is, of course, you mentioned it. You and Eric talked about it, is the trading of Justin Fields. First of all, your feeling is that this was not going to happen, that Justin Fields was going to remain a quarterback. What happened?
Well, obviously, the people in house felt different. Now, I've said it to some people, never said it publicly. I knew there was one person in the Bears front office who was high up that was not a JF fan. So and he's got a lot to say in the process. I'm not going to mention his name. So you knew something was going to happen. I just think, whenever I say anything, it's how I think. It's not that, and what I do if I was in the same situation. And I go back, and I've said it numerous times on the show, I don't think the guy's really been given a fair chance. People can say what they want about, well, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. Granted, some of that is 100% true. He also hasn't been coached. I think what has happened to this guy since he's come in the league, and there's people, around the league, connected to the league, into the league, former league players, that they all agree with that. I mean, he comes in, he was mismanaged as a rookie by Nagy, has to play that game in Cleveland, wasn't prepared for it at all. And that's not his fault. That's the coaching staff's fault. Now, I think by the end of the year, he was coming on pretty strong. But then you get rid of the coaching staff, you bring in a whole new offense, but you got an offensive coordinator who doesn't know how to be an offensive coordinator. And that, where the scheme itself is a winning scheme, the guy who was running that scheme had no clue how to run it, even though he knew it, if that makes sense. And sure. I think that, and obviously year two, Ryan Poles stripped down the franchise. There are no players, so how was he supposed to show on that? Last year it was hot and cold. To me, I want to find out what I got. He's a first round pick. Now, granted, not Ryan Poles' guy. He's Ryan Pace's guy. And, you can flip the switch on the quarterback contract, and that's important. There's no way you could have kept Justin Fields and drafted a quarterback, and that would have worked. There's no way in hell you can have Justin Fields and Caleb Williams. It's just, that would be a time bomb going off in the building, especially with the way the veterans have vocalized so often in the last month or 6 weeks on wanting Justin to stay. It would have been a Thomas Jones, Cedric Benson scenario, but worse all over again. So I get everything. And now I'm I got some problems with Caleb, nothing having to do with his talent. His talent's up here.
You said that for a long time, yes.
Yeah. So if he's mature, accepts accountability, accepts coaching, lets himself be a rookie instead of above a rookie, and then he'll be fine. And I hope he does great. That'll be interesting, though. I wonder if they're going to play any games over this week and next week. You've got his workout on Wednesday. They're going to be there. Michigan is on Friday. Do they even go to Michigan? Somebody will be there, but does the entourage go? Okay, now with JJ, you could do him right here at the Peyton Center because he's a local kid, and then it's very private. So you don't have to, but Michigan's got other players, so you're going to send people there. It's do you send, the big decision makers there? Right. Then next week, and this is what's interesting, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why LSU did this. The league meeting starts Sunday. So really Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning. Yet LSU, who's got what some people think is the number 2 quarterback in this draft, has got their pro day on Monday. Can a head coach be there? Well, theoretically, no. Can a general manager be there? Theoretically, no. Can they bolt the meetings? Yeah, they can bolt the meetings. But will they? And so I think that whole scenario was kind of interesting. And that's shame on Brian Kelly and LSU for not looking ahead and planning that pro day, because the league meetings are out, months in advance when the date are. You got at least 3 top 10, or not at least, you got 3 top 10 players on that, or 3 top 15, because Brian Thomas is going to go in the top 15. You got 2 receivers that are going in the top 15 and a quarterback, and they're having a pro day when a GM and a head coach can't be there. To me, that's just crazy.
D Larso 15, I call him D15, says, Mr. Gabriel, can you please drop the inside info you have?
No, and I'll say it, and you got a tweet from guy, I was being slanderous. No, it's none of their business. If I got dirt on you, you want me to tell? Meaning you, Aldo. If I know some stuff about you, do you want me to advertise it? No, you don't know it about any other player in the draft.
He claims that you said you would on X a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I did. And I changed my mind because it's not the right thing to do. It's private. And when you work hard to get it, I've done this since 1981. And you work hard to get that information. I've built up a network of people all around the league that I trust, and I know where they get their info and how they get it. And I know the information I get from them is very, very good. So I'll leave it at that. I trust everything that's been told to me. I have concerns. I hope I'll say this, there's no criminality or anything like that. It's just issues that you want your franchise quarterback, who's the face of the franchise, to be. Can he fix it? Absolutely he can. That's on him to do it.
Getting back to the topic of Justin Fields for a moment, Courtney Cronin sent out a X post with her being interviewed by Pat the designer, and she said that the market told us that Justin Fields is not a starting quarterback, that so many teams that could have traded for him as opposed to a Sam Darnold who was traded and some of these other players. So what is this disconnect? Luke Getsy gets a job as an offensive coordinator, and yet NFL teams do not apparently think that he is a starting caliber quarterback, at least, when you judge it by trade value.
I think you can put part of that back to what Eric and I were talking about. I don't think the Bears handled it correctly on getting the proper value for the trade. And that's on them. Just right from the day the season ended, you have that first presser, and he's going, well, we're going to do right by Justin Fields. Just by saying that, you said he's for sale, but I don't know when he's for sale. And so now you've already weakened his market. So, so if you've seen it happen a lot when it comes out, you see something, Rappaport or Schefter, and they'll say X player, the Cowboys are trying to trade X player, and if not, he'll be waived. And 2 days later, it gets waived. Because who's going to trade for him? They know you're going to cut him, and it's easier to sign him as a free agent. So if you want him, why give up something when you don't have to give up anything but some money? So I think that's what a lot of that is. What's going to be interesting, and we all know this is going to happen, is everybody's going to watch what he does in his career next year. And maybe it's going to take maybe he's got a city here, who knows? But you're going to watch what he turns into. And obviously you're going to watch, and we're going to get a firsthand knowledge how Caleb is going to be. And damn well people are going to compare it. And what happens if JF turned himself into a hell of a quarterback and Caleb is, there's no lock that anybody, we see it. The only quarterback that's had any success from that 21 class is Lawrence, and he's been average.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the guy's the first pick in the draft does not mean that he's a lock to be great. And Louis Reddick said it perfect. He had a tweet, it was either earlier today or last night, but I retweeted it. Let's throw out this generational thing. That's bullshit.
Last night.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we've been running a poll on the.
I lost you, buddy. You froze.
Okay.
There you go.
And so has my computer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Are you okay with the return on the trade for Justin Fields? 53% said yes, 47% said no. I gotta believe here that, well, you already talked about this, and we talked about the show. Did Poles do a disservice to the Chicago Bears organization by not taking the most value that was perhaps offered? We don't know for sure, but if indeed he got a better offer than what the Steelers offered, and Justin said, I don't want to go to that team, I want to go to Pittsburgh, do you think that Poles did a disservice to the organization?
Well, it's kind of hard to answer, but I'm going to try to be as honest as I can.
Sure.
Ryan Poles does not work for Justin Fields. They have a good relationship. They're close. I get that he wants to do what's right for Justin Fields, but his job as general manager of the Chicago Bears, he works for the Chicago Bears, and his job is to get the best value he can. This guy was a first-round pick. Okay, and they've got a lot of money invested. So looking at it from that side, you say, well, yeah, I'd like to do the best thing for him because I really respect him and I like him. And granted, we didn't give him the best situation. We didn't help him. But on the other hand, so-and-so's going to give me a solid 4 where they're going to give me a 6. To me, you got to take the 4. But it is what it is. I understand exactly what Ryan's doing. I get it. I don't necessarily agree. Hey, this is a business. Mm-hmm. And you think if Pittsburgh plays the Bears a few years down the road and Pittsburgh and Justin Fields is the quarterback and Pittsburgh's got a chance to come back and beat the Bears, he's going to go, well, he was real nice to me. He got me this job here. We won't play that hard today. It's not going to happen. He's going to try to cut his throat, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was thinking just before you said that. Is I was going to ask it in the form of a question was, do you think that players are going to say, I want to play for the Chicago Bears because this guy really treats his players well, even when they're trading them?
No,
I just don't see that.
No, it's about money. Money talks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll say this, because I think there's a lot of fact to it this year. because the quarterback situation has been as it's been the last few weeks, especially in free agency, that costs them being able to sign a wide receiver in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Guys want to go where they know what the situation is, receivers as a whole, I'm not talking individuals here as a group. They're divas. They want the ball. They want targets. And so it's like, why am I going there? I don't even know who's throwing it to me. So you either got to overpay big time, and that's one thing Ryan Poles isn't going to do, or you got to go out and make a trade, which he did do. So, but that brings up another thing, and we really won't have an answer for another few weeks on this. Like Eric said, Odunze at 9. I can't see it. Number one, they traded for the wide receiver. Number two, they got one pass rusher on this team. That's it. And when you talk to the decision makers, being Flus and Poles, they've both said it at separate times and together. We have to get another defensive end. They struck out in free agency at defensive end because, he sets a ceiling on what he's going to pay. And knowing what I know, he's not going to pay a dime more than what that ceiling is. There was guys available. They didn't get any. They still only got one pass rusher. What's that tell you?
I agree with you. It's hard to see them drafting a wide receiver in the first round. Let me ask you this. Do you think that Keenan Allen is a one-year rental to help this young quarterback that is going to likely be the starter for the team? And that
he will be the starter. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Well, there was a question by somebody in the chat. I'll find it in a second, but essentially it was, do you think that they might bring in a veteran bridge quarterback in case they see that Caleb is not ready to take snaps in the NFL?
No, not at all. They first of all, who's available? The musical chairs have stopped, or the music stopped and there's no chairs left. We've seen all that movement. Now you're going to see rookies being drafted. Mm-hmm. I disagree with Eric in that value is value. And when you get into day 2, Knicks and the Washington kid are getting drafted day 2, unless a medical's bad. The talent is just too high for them not to. Right. But, getting back to the edge, there is a huge drop-off. I really liked Trice from Washington going into the year. Trice did not have as good a year as he had in 22. And then his combine workout was very, very average. That was like took all the air out of the balloon as far as I was concerned, because, you want to see some explosiveness and you just didn't see it. So if you need a guy who's going to step in and start, and they might not get their pick of the litter, worst case scenario is they're going to get 2, but you can also trade down and still get one of those 4 and pick up some more things. Now, if Odunze is there, then it might be a case. It's, where is he on their board? And if he's clearly higher and higher, then you got to take him. But then they're stuck because there's nobody out there they can get. There's nobody on the street. And unless they swing a trade and Philly decides they want to trade Sweat again, but they said they're not going to, that doesn't mean they won't. But and you're not going to give up a pick this year. So you're going to have to give up a pick next year to do that. So yeah, there will be options. But I think the answer will be, if you see over the next couple of weeks, the Bears sign a couple wide receivers, and there's still some decent names there. I should have wrote down the names and I didn't. That could change, because that's telling you, I got to get the edge. You can get in the 3rd round the who is it? DJ Move the Sticks has got like 10 wide receivers in his top 50 right now. Okay. Our 10 wide receivers going to go in the first 2 rounds. But I think, and even if that happens, everybody rates him different. You could be getting where the Bears pick in the 3rd round. Let's say they end up striking out and they don't trade down, they don't get a second or anything like that. They could be, picking with that high 3rd. They could get 10, 11, 12, 13, that guy on their receiver board. And in this class, that's a damn good player.
Some people in the chat, like Tim, have said he's got a crazy thought, but what is the chance they draft one of the other quarterbacks and have them sit behind Tyson Bagent?
I don't think it makes any sense because they only got 4 picks.
If you trade down from number 1 to with Giants, say, I think they.
You mean trade out of number 1?
Yeah, and then pick a quarterback like J.J. McCarthy or something like that.
Could it happen? Anything can happen, right?
As we've learned.
But let's look at reality. Ryan Poles would be doing this. He'd be setting himself up for crucifixion.
Yes, he would.
So is that what he's going to do? I doubt it. I think it's done. And unless, like I say, that you pull a Peyton Manning type situation where he refuses to play for the Bears or something like that, that could happen. But with him, this kid wants to be number 1. And right now the Bears got number 1.
Well, that's going to be a fascinating, because there are concerns that he's never really been under center. He has never run a pro system. He's
run a totally opposite system from a pro thing.
Right.
That part doesn't worry me. And to learn to play from under center. How often I'd have to go back and look at Seattle film to see how much they play from under center versus the gun. You could always adapt that. You got to play to the strengths of your player.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that they went and got another wide receiver, so now you've got 2 very good wide receivers. You still need another one because he isn't on the roster.
Yeah. You don't think Tyler Scott can make that leap?
No, I think Tyler Scott's like Bayless Jones in that, you're praying he catches the ball. They both they can both run like hell, but
Oh, well, we were talking about defensive ends, and Muck wants to know, do we have enough cap space to perhaps sign a guy like Chase Young?
I wouldn't touch Chase Young.
Why?
Chase Young's not going to get any money because he's damaged goods. There's a reason why he's still out there, Or a weekend, nobody's even signed him.
Yeah.
Teams have brought him in. You give Chase Young a 1-year, just prove it deal, and you hope the need. Here's the deal. I'm back. The guy from Minnesota played with Minnesota last year. He was supposed to visit here Friday. He goes down to Carolina the day before. And Carolina signs him. Chase Young was there. Chase Young, they had an opportunity to sign Chase Young. They said, see ya. Okay, now they got the results of the medical. He had a catastrophic injury. It wasn't just an ACL. It was a lot more than that. Okay, he has not played good since he had that injury. That was, 2020? You can't, that's a long time ago. It's like bringing Colin Kaepernick back. Could you give him a year? Yeah. I wouldn't give him a bonus, though. I wouldn't even give him a bonus. Or give him it's because now part of it's the medical. If you get the medical and the medical's okay. But the worst thing, the dagger, is that when he got traded to San Francisco, he stunk. He was terrible at San Francisco. Notice they didn't want to bring him back.
Yeah.
He took off plays. He'd make a flash play here and a flash play there. But his overall play from beginning to end was absolutely pathetic in San Francisco. So why is he going to be a savior here?
What about Yannick Ngakoue? Would you? I think you said you would consider signing him.
Yeah, you might have to.
Yeah, exactly. There's still a lot of talk, of course. Obviously, Badass Warthog says Yannick at a reduced price. And
he wasn't expensive last year. I mean, he was $10 million, but he wasn't. You could probably get him cheaper than that. Huh?
Yeah. J2K says we have 19 million left. 14 to 16 goes to the rookies, and you got to have some in case of injuries. He believes that we're done in free agency. What are your thoughts?
First of all, that rookie money, throw that out. That means nothing until the day you sign. Okay, there's guys on this roster now that aren't going to be here.
Right.
They might not be here when they sign the rookies. You signed 3 offensive line, traded and signed 2, traded for 1 offensive lineman to be your and the one guy from Seattle is a swing guard and tackle. The San Francisco that guy got is a swing tackle, and then you've got Bates and the center from the Rams, who are center guards. You take care of a lot of your depth right there. The guy I think could be on the outside looking in, and only because of salary, is Larry Borom. Larry Borom got the pushed up salary because of all the play time he had in his first 2 years. Mm-hmm. So he's making like close to $3.2 million this year.
Yeah, that's not right.
But how about this? Khalil Herbert is like $2 million less because he didn't have the play time that Borom got. So do you think he's expendable? At that $3 million. Now you can cut him and bring him back at a more reasonable figure, but you're not going to pay him $3 million to be a backup. Mm-hmm. Just not going to. And then there's probably a few more that on there. So there's more money there. And if you restructure, if you do a deal with Allen for the receiver and extend him a year or 2, that's going to bring down that cap figure on that. So there's all sorts of ways you can do money. And there's some of the contracts they got underway. They're already under contract. You can reduce some of those to create money. So money is not an issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, Over the Cap and Spotrac, they do a good job of kind of giving you an idea. But they haven't seen actual contracts. They have, none of these figures that they post, in my opinion, are actual figures because things are constantly moving and they haven't seen actual contracts. So you gotta, whether it could be $1 million off, it could be $1 off. I don't know what it is, but it's not actuality.
I don't know if it's still now, but going back to before free agency started, the 2 of them had like a $2.5 million difference on the Bears cap.
Right.
So I don't know which one's right. You know what? It's an approximation. We know approximately that's how much money they have. But like I said, I'm not worried about like the rookie pool. You got to have X amount of dollars for the rookie pool. Well, if you trade out a 9, that already drops your rookie pool because your rookie pool is based on where the picks are and the slotted money. So there's so many different ways that can be manipulated that, on paper, they got like $31 million, give or take. Okay. So it's a lot of freaking money. It's a lot more than most teams have. Mm-hmm. And they can go out, they can do the 1-year deal things. if you did a Chase Young, you're not going to sign him to a 2-year deal. You're going to give him a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not even going to sign him if he came in here and did a medical and he's got an arthritic knee. They aren't going to sign him because they know what happens with that. He might not practice. That thing could swell up and he's not paying and I got to pay him. He's not playing and I got to pay him. So there's all these different things. So then it comes back to Ngakwe. He got hurt at the end of the year. How bad was that injury? Is he ready to go? One thing you can say about Ngakwe, he takes care of himself. He's a hard worker. But if you look at history, he never gets signed until summertime for whatever reason.
By the way, did you bet your pension regarding
Nobody took it. I said, yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
That was not, you know what the date was? I got the tweet. January 23rd. Nobody.
That's hilarious.
I know. So, but you got to take it.
Yeah.
And then you got to put up collateral against it. And anyway, it's not over yet. What if they don't take Caleb?
And there's a possibility of that. Absolutely.
I win.
Marty, who's not a big fan of yours, according to some of his comments here, but he says that Justin Fields would have been cut if he wasn't traded. You believe that that's even a possibility? Yeah. There's no way. There's no way. And he would not be on the Bears roster, but he would have been moved for something. There's no way they would have cut him.
There was 4 other teams that wanted him.
Say that again?
3 or 4 teams that wanted him, according to Ian Rappaport.
Exactly. So there was a market there.
Of course there was a market there. If you notice, it's lying season, and Rappaport says last week, well, the Bears haven't tried to trade him. Well, Bears have been trying to trade him for the last 3, Don't believe everything you hear this time of year.
I agree. What about Iceberg Slim is complimenting you, saying you're looking pretty slim these days, and maybe a size large? Have you lost some weight?
No, that's Greg? Medium. I'm gaining weight because I can't work out because of my. And I'm going to this week. I'm getting the okay. I can go. And,
all right.
So, the gym's right around the corner. I can roll over there. And
no excuses, Greg.
It's killing me. But actually, I've gained a little. I'm not anywhere near. When Eric and I were working in the XFL, and that was, I had Achilles surgery and a knee replacement, and it's like, I was like 215.
Yeah, that was right around the time I met you. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now I'm 170, but I've been less. So
170 is pretty good. Ceiling Fan wants to know about Jadeveon Clowney. What about a 1-year rental for Clowney?
He's a dog.
Oh, thanks. Huh?
I just don't think that he is he's a hot and cold player. Mm-hmm. When he wants to play, he plays. And when he doesn't want to play, he goes through the numbers. He just there on the field. That, to me, doesn't sit well with the people in charge and the head coach. Mm-hmm. So I can't see that happening.
Yeah. Baki asked a question. Do you think there's any way that Poles doesn't find a way to get a second-round pick in this draft?
Well, you got to try it. I've been playing that game, the last few days, trying to see. And so you look at the chart, and the chart is not exact because market conditions happen. So it's like, okay, who's got this pick? How far do you got to go to have the numbers to pick up a 2? Okay, and you got to go at least 8 picks. So that's 17. And what can you get at 17? And then you can get, you can get a 2. But, and I forgot who's at 17, but you look at that and you go, well, you got to look at what they have to give up. And you think, are these teams likely to move? One is Cincinnati. Cincinnati is not a team that generally trades up, if you look at their history. So, And I'll tell you the team, though, that looks like, and they've got capital, And it could be a trading partner, especially based on needs. None other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they're at 21. But, who knows? Now, you could end up doing a couple, go from 9, and I'll just make the numbers up. Go from 9 to 12 and get a third. Go from 12 to 15 or 16 and get another third or something like that. And then, but you still don't have a 2. But then what you can do if that happens is use that to try to get into 2 if there's a player you really want. So, but we're not going to know the answer to that until draft night. And really, second day draft night.
Exactly. Hair Bear has a question similar to one I posed. He says he's not convinced Caleb is ready to go under center day 1. How much does NFL readiness come into play when drafting? Would J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels make more sense for this Bears team?
I'm a J.J. fan. Part of it is the intangibles are off the chart. Does he have the physical skills a couple of the other guys? Maybe not. But then maybe does. We just didn't see it because of how he was used at Michigan. Michigan used a pro-style offense. So the concepts were there. It was a run-heavy offense. That was Harbaugh's way of thinking. As a good friend of mine said, the Michigan offense did a disservice to JJ because, it was an offense run by an offensive line coach who was the coordinator who calls plays like an offensive line coach. And that's the quote. So he said, if you would have put him at LSU or you would have put him at USC or one of the other things, his numbers would have been so much better. So now you're looking at the talent, but I just think that, I already talked about if JF turns into a good player, then that's going to be used against Poles. And if he passes on Caleb and Caleb becomes what a lot of people think he's going to become. And at one time I did. I wrote that one article. I said, this guy could be the second coming. Then you're putting yourself up for, it's like the Mitchell Trubisky thing. Let's say, you took Mitchell Trubisky, but you passed on Patrick Mahomes. Nobody brings up the fact that a bunch of other teams passed on Patrick Mahomes too. He didn't go to 10th. But, and people bring it up, they say, well, you didn't draft Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers went 24th.
That's right.
Okay. Come
on. Jeff wants to know, what are your thoughts on Adonai Mitchell from Texas? Does he go in round 1? He's also heard that there's some character issues with Mitchell and that his motor runs hot and cold.
Okay. I don't know about the character issues. I can find that out. It's just a matter of making a couple phone calls. The good player, marginal first. Both of those Texas receivers are marginal first. The one guy, the little guy, he's not little. He is. He's like Jadavion Smith, the Eagles took. He's, 6'1", 165 pounds, skinny as a rail, but he never gets hurt. And he returns kicks. But he also runs a 4.21.
Pretty good.
So he's lightning. They're both really good. They're different kinds of players. One's an X. The other guy's a Z. But I like the other guy because he can return kicks. I'm not as big on the Western Kentucky kid because the thing I kept saying when I kept doing the film was, when I'm looking at a receiver, obviously you're looking at route running and stuff, but I put a lot of emphasis on hands, catch radius, and run after the catch. And the run after the catch comes from, different coaches I worked for starting with Tom Coughlin. By the way, Tom Coughlin was a wide receiver coach for the Giants before he became head coach at Boston College, and a damn good wide receiver coach. But him, Todd Haley, and other guys that I worked with, Daryl Drake, who was here for a long time, he unfortunately passed away in training camp 2019, working for the Steelers. All those guys put a huge emphasis on catch radius and run after the catch. That's why I like Neighbors so much. I mean, his run after the catches is rare. But the Western Kentucky kid, what's his name, Corliss, his catch radius seems to be in here.
Yeah.
You never see him doing this, and so that bothers me. And he runs like hell. He's pretty good after the catch. But if you don't put the throw right on him, is he going to get it? So that to me is, okay, that's Tyler Scott. Because Tyler Scott doesn't have a big catch radius. Well, already got that guy, so.
That's right.
So it's finding the right guy that fits what you want. And like I say, we'll go. What we ought to do, and again, we'll see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks. Because if they sign, say, 2 more free agent wide receivers, that's telling you what they're doing with 9.
There you go.
If they don't, then they could be waiting. Well, if Rome is there, we're taking him, but otherwise, we're going in another direction. And you couldn't follow for that because Rome Odunze is up here. It'll be interesting, but what I want to do is let's just assume they sign a couple. And tell you, one guy I was really high on, and he got signed yesterday, was KJ Osborne, who was with the Vikings. He got signed by New England. I thought he would have been an excellent signing. And he didn't get a lot of money. He got $4 million from New England. So it'll just, if they in fact sign a couple vets, then let's do an exercise as we get closer. And all those guys that could fall into the 3rd round, assuming that there's no 2nd round.
Gotcha. I don't want to overlook this question by Dobbs. He asked it a little while ago. No one has explained the why now question. Why not after the pro day? Of course, he's referring to the Justin Fields trade. Why give him away for peanuts? He could have started this year and then walked next year while Caleb sat and learned for a year.
Well, we already answered part of that. There's no way you could have had those 2 in the same locker room. It wasn't going to work. It would have made for a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. So I think from all indications are that Pittsburgh was always the team that wanted him. They got Russell Wilson for nothing. Russell Wilson's costing him $1.2 million. He's getting paid by Denver. He had 39 or $37 million guaranteed for this year. They're paying all but the 1.2. They signed him for the minimum. And Denver picks up the rest. So they got 2 quarterbacks for less than $5 million. That's a pretty good deal by Omar Khan.
No doubt. It's a great deal. All right, let's get a couple more.
But anyway, let just answer it. Why?
Finish your thoughts.
Pittsburgh wanted to get the deal done.
Yeah.
And I think also, it's come out that Poles was working with David Mugoletta, who's an excellent agent and who's Justin's agent. And, with all the BS going on in Chicago, it was like time. It's like, okay, let's cut the cord. Let's get this done.
Yeah. I suspected that too, that Justin's representation said, listen, the guy is taking a beating. Let's get it done, as you just said. The other thing is that Justin has a very powerful agent. And do you think that if Poles would have said, I need more time, he could have alienated this agent, and it could have been an issue with negotiating with that agent for future players?
I think to be fair, you got to separate yourself from each player. You can be pissed off, but it could hurt you in the free agent market, but not necessarily in the draft market, because of that. But I think that, from that standpoint, Poles probably did himself a favor. Didn't necessarily help the Bears, but did him, in dealing with some of these people, did himself a favor. Something had to be done, and it had to be done. And I think, as the truth starts to come out, it's like, hey, we had a couple teams. I wonder who the other team was. I don't think it was Philly, because you don't got Pittsburgh is an ideal situation. He's got a legitimate chance to compete for that job. Okay, Atlanta. Well, they wouldn't have signed Cousins if it's Atlanta, or I can't see them. But that could have been one. I don't know. Maybe Arizona, because Kyler Murray to me is just a guy. He's getting paid a lot of money. So, but I don't know. And we'll probably never know. Yeah. But we know one was Pittsburgh.
Let's see. I got a few more here. Let's go to PZ, who asked, is the offensive line better this year than last? If so, can you kind of quantify that? Give us a percentage, how much better?
I like what it is on paper. We got to see how people keep going to this. Got to get a left tackle. No, they don't. They got a left tackle. His name's Braxton Jones.
Yeah.
The guy who's coaching him loves him. The guy who's the general manager loves him. But we've talked about that argument about 30 times on here. The center position is upgraded, regardless of who ends up being the center. Personally, just using how they were acquired, people are saying, what's the guy's name they got from the Rams?
Help me out, chat room. The Rams center, who is now with the Chicago Bears, Shelton. Shelton something?
Yeah. Shelton is the first name, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, he gets signed for 1 year.
Coleman Shelton.
Thank you. One year as at $3 million, right? Okay. Bates has got 2 years, $8 million left, and they gave up a 5th-round pick. It's a guy they wanted for 2 years. To me, that says that's the guy who's number one. Just based on that, we went out to get this guy and gave up a pick to get him. So you look at tape, the guy's pretty good. You look at tape on Coleman Shelton, he's pretty good. Not as athletic as Bates, not as big as Bates, but he's going to handle the job. The good thing with Bates is Bates can play guard or center. As far as I know, Coleman Shelton is a center only, but I can make a call to my Rams guy to see if he's got any guard experience.
I believe he does, according to a report from PFF.
Because, good friend of mine's on the staff there.
Cool.
So, guy who used to work for me. So I think they're good. The depth is better. I really don't know how they feel about Ja'Tyre Carter. he seemed like when he had to play early in the year, he played pretty good. Then at the end of the year, he's not even active.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I think, because, and I'm guessing here, he can't play center, has never played center. And, he was a tackle in college.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have the guys who dress got to have the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
You're not always, if you keep 9 offensive linemen, you dress 7 on Sunday, your 6 and 7 aren't necessarily your 6th and 7th best guys, but they're the guys who have the flexibility to play more than one position.
Yeah. Right.
And so that could have been a reason. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in camp, because if he was on the shit list, then he isn't going to be around. I'll throw one name out, and I guarantee you, and I admit I'm throwing a dart at the wall, that could be on the trade block. One I just said was Larry Bourne. You might be able to get a 6th or 7th round pick for Bourne. I mean, he's got probably more 7th than 6th. But how about Khalil Herbert?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's got, he's on his contract year, the final year of his contract.
Right.
But he's proven, I mean, the guy averaged, over almost 5 yards.
4.6.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not reliable as a receiver. He's not reliable as a pass blocker.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. Give him the ball and he can tote it.
Yep.
He's darn good. But when you look at what Swift can do and what Johnson can do, they've got all-around games where Khalil Herbert doesn't. So do you see, again, you don't have a 6 and you don't have a 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's not going to save you any money. He's only making $1.2 million. So it's not like, you're trying to ship him out because of the money. But being that he might have value, do you do that?
Yeah, the question is does he have value given, the running back situation in the NFL? And
well, it's not a great running back class, though. So
that is probably true.
And he's going into his 4th year, so the team acquiring him would be saying it's a 1-year rental, like a baseball deal, or a hockey deal, and then we'll make up our mind at the end of the year.
Yeah. Does Velus Jones have any trade value?
No.
I didn't think so. Muck Wants to know, how do you feel about Dallas Turner at number 9?
I think as much as I got Leitao as the best pass rusher, and by the way, from everything I've heard, Leitao was good to go medically.
So the medicals aren't a problem?
Shouldn't be I can't specifically say for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
I know from other clubs that they have flat out told me he's good.
Okay.
We suspected that when Stacey Dale said when the defensive linemen were working that it was a fusion in his neck. And as long as it wasn't cervical 1 and cervical 2, there's a lot of guys in the league who are playing with fusions in their neck. It's not a big deal. If the surgery was poor, then it's a big deal. But given the fact that he's played 2 years without a problem, and I know of a few clubs that have passed him, he's going in the 1st round. He doesn't, even though he's the best player production-wise and technique-wise, he's also, when you look athletically, the worst athlete. And he's not a bad athlete. His workout was pretty good too. But as compared to the other guys, I mean, you got Chop and Turner both run sub 4.5s. Chop on the pro day at Penn State on Friday ran like a 6.9 3-cone at 250 something pounds. That's crazy good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 20 years old. And at that position, more than probably a lot of other positions, because pass rushers aren't necessarily coached that well in college. And they don't get the technique work and the hand use that they get from NFL coaches, a lot of times you're drafting those guys on traits, and those two guys' traits are way up here.
Yep.
You know, so wouldn't shock me if they end up being 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with the year Anderson had last year, and Dallas Turner coming from the same school, you could very well say, you know, he could be the same type of player as Will Anderson was last year. So it's interesting. Would I take one at 9? I mean, yeah, it's how your board looks.
Exactly.
You know, so it's either take one or you try to, but you're not going to trade. You know, we brought up Pittsburgh and they could be a potential, but they're 21. You aren't going to get any of them at 21. Mm-hmm. There's only 4. And after that, you know, it's like take the express elevator down to the basement. So you got to, if you're going to trade down, you can't trade down far.
That's the big thing. What do you do with the number 9 pick and how far back you go? I've been saying now for a couple of months that 9th pick is our second rounder. You can get a really good quality player, but
you're going to, even if you trade down 3 or 4 spots, you're going to get a hell of a player.
Yeah, that's true. Zach wants to know if you know what the Giants are going to do at number 6.
Years ago, I would have known. Now they got, you know, their administration's so different now than it was. Chris Mira is not, he's involved, but not as involved. Mm-hmm. He'll get, I mean, you know, he used to go on the road with all of us and scout like all of us, but he does a lot of tape work. He'll go to the pro days. You know, he'll go out a little in the fall, but he doesn't do anywhere near as much as he used to do when I was working with him. And he carried a full schedule. And Chris is a damn good evaluator. You know, Shane has done a pretty good job there, I think, so far. They extended the quarterback a year ago. You know, it cost them a ton of money to walk away from that right now. So I can't see them doing that, but can they bring in competition? Yeah. They can also bring in a wide receiver. I think there's a couple different ways they could go. You know, they're not bringing in an edge. They just got Brian Burns and they drafted one in the first round a couple years ago. Yeah. But they could go offensive line again. Mm-hmm. But wide receiver, quarterback, offensive line, I think, or maybe it might be a little high for the first corner. In fact, it is a little high. It is too high for the first corner. But you know, that's what I would guess.
Flex Diggs wants to know about Darius Robinson, the kid from Mizzou. He plays inside and out. Do you see him as a late first rounder? I've seen him. Some of the evaluators say he's a late first rounder, early second.
Could be. Yeah, he's going to, you know, I always got that group, you know, 20 to 40, 25 to 40 guy.
Yeah.
You know, so you could fall in there. It's how each team has you ranked, but I don't see in this defense, he's not an edge. He doesn't have enough explosiveness to him. You know, when you look at his workout numbers, he ran 4.9 something, you know, he's a 3 technique here.
All right, Greg, I think we've gotten the majority of the questions out. Jeff asked if the Bears moved down from 9. I don't see them having a shot at a top edge like Turner, but do you see an edge available in that 15 to 20 range? Would you think that Darius Robinson could be?
Chop Robinson, I mean, Chop Robinson, people, his athleticism and his age got people like, wow, what this guy can be, you know. Again, he's 20-freaking-year-old rookie. You're going to probably get late 2, 50. I think by 20, the 4 of them are gone. Okay, but you're going to get one of them in that 15, 16 area, maybe even 2. Maybe you get a choice of 2. because it's when does all Fashano go? How many receivers go? 3 are going to go. Does Brian Thomas, the other LSU player, go? Our 4 quarterbacks gone. Bowers hasn't worked out yet. What's going to happen with him? Corners are a high value position. When's the first corner coming off the board? So we still got 5 weeks to go. There's a long way to go. A lot of pro days, a lot of 30 visits, a lot of private workouts. We're at this date last year, were we talking about Wright being the Bears' first pick at 10?
Mm-hmm.
Because they traded down 1 spot?
Right.
No.
Jeff's got an interesting question here. Greg, what are the odds the Bears would trade the future number 2 that they got from Carolina? That's a 2025 second-round pick to get back into round 2 this year. They would have to add something to the Carolina's second-round pick.
They made a trade like that a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think with New England, but it might have been a third for a third.
Okay.
I would use. I would try it. I've thought about that, and I think it's a decent scenario, but I would try to trade the Bears 2 because you think the Bears 2 is going to be a little lower than Carolina's 2.
It better be.
So if they don't, we're going to be sitting here with another coach and another GM and another house.
Exactly.
More
tears from me.
Yeah, and could you couple it with something else? Yeah, but it's a possibility. Put it this way, and it would have to be with a team that's got more than 1-2, and they're saying, yeah, they're playing with a rookie quarterback. They're going to suck. I'll do that deal. One of those type of situations.
Sure. All right, I got a couple more I want to squeeze in here. Black Belt Ben says, what do you think about Jackson Powers Johnson? Can he go before pick number 20? And if not, do you think the Steelers could take him?
I think that's in the range that he's going to go.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that area, being that he's, traditionally look where centers go.
Mm-hmm. I think that
and centers not too often do centers go in the first round.
Yeah, I think he's a little overvalued for the first round, in my opinion. He's a second round pick. As tough as he is, I've seen him get overpowered. If you look at the Senior Bowl tape, he got overpowered a couple of times, and it was, to me, a little concerning.
Yeah, but you still got to go back and you look at the regular season tape. You're always going to count that better than you are at the Senior Bowl.
Good point.
But he's not 20 to 40. He's going before that.
Mm-hmm.
20 to 35, I think is fair. The guy from the Ravens took the guy from Illinois, and he was a little bit undersized. Where was that? Around 18, 19, or was it a little lower than that? And that was real high for a center.
Yeah.
Centers generally don't go that high.
Mm-hmm.
Look where the Giants took the kid from Minnesota last year. That was in the second round.
Yeah. Gosh, I forgot his name, but he was one of my favorites in the draft.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jeff just asked. Oh, not that one. What is Frazier's range? And Frazier is the kid from
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah.
Day 2.
Second or third rounder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a center only, as far as he has played some guard, but I think in our league he's a center only.
Marty asks, Justin Fields has been subpar. In what world does Greg think all of a sudden he will start succeeding against zone defenses?
He hasn't been coached. I will go on my deathbed saying that poor guy has not been coached since he's walked into the league.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go.
It's amazing what a good coach can do for a quarterback.
good coach and
and maybe I'm wrong. And we're going to find out whether it's this year or next year. We will find out. And he'll be a total dud, and he'll be Mitch Trubisky, or he can turn into a player. Maybe Geno Smith was a second rounder that was a total dud. All of a sudden, he's a good quarterback. That brings up a good point right there.
Okay.
Because I've said a few times, and I think we got the answer now. So, and this can go back to being I'm totally wrong with what the last guy just asked. I think part of the call on this, maybe it wasn't involved at all. So I admit I'm throwing a dart at the wall. It was Shane Waldron's opinion. And if Shane said, hey, I can do with him what I did with Geno Smith. Or was it Flus and Ryan and Ian saying, no, it's time to move on. We want to reset the contract, get our own guy. We don't have the answer to that, but I would think that part of this is Shane wasn't exactly jumping up on the table.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about this more on my show Tuesday night, but I think that part of the reason was the fourth quarter performance by Justin Fields. And Ryan Poles mentioned it at the combine. He says, well, what are we looking for? And in that list, he threw in fourth quarter performance, and that determines win-loss record. And so I think that they were.
There's no question. I just say, and I'm convinced a lot of that has to do with what the play calling is too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It goes
point.
hand in hand.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I want to squeeze this last one in here. I've said that 15 times. Greg, do you think Poles went against Kevin Warren and what McCaskey wanted when he traded?
I have no idea on that.
Yeah, because they've spoke so highly of Justin.
Yeah, I don't know Kevin Warren, so I can't speak for Kevin Warren. I know George McCaskey. And, I worked with George because when I was there, he didn't have the position that he has now. His brother did, Mike. And the McCaskies left you alone. They did not get involved in our business. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know what we were doing. That's it. Okay. And they gave you their blessing. If that's what you think is the right thing to do, go ahead and do it. So is George more involved than Michael? I would say yes, because that's George's personality. Mm-hmm. But they'll be the first ones to tell you, I'm not a football expert. We hire football experts. And, Kevin is, he's at his position, he speaks for ownership. But that I would say I'm 99.8% sure that ownership and Kevin signed off.
Well, in the money situation, a bean counter like Kevin Warren, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but he's responsible for the economics of the team. I'm sure, that was attractive to him too. Bring in a guy on a rookie contract, and now you can spend money on free agents over the next 3 to 4 years. Do the Brock Purdy effect. Now, Caleb's rookie contract is going to be much higher than Brock Purdy's rookie contract, but it's still allowed.
Brock Purdy was the last pick. I mean, he was like a $75,000 signing bonus and a rookie minimum. Come on.
Yes,
he cost you nothing.
That's right. So, we'll see. There's so much more to talk about. This offseason is really now just getting started now that we know what the quarterback situation is.
We got 5 more weeks of a lot of good talk.
A lot of really good talk, yes. And if something dramatic happens at the pro day, maybe I can talk Greg into coming on Thursday to talk further about it.
I had a little text conversation with DJ, Daniel Jeremiah, because I thought he would be at USC.
Yeah, I thought so too.
No, he's going to be in the studio, which is, like
okay,
10, 15 miles from the campus.
Right.
But
they're covering, NFL Network is covering Caleb's pro day.
They'll probably have somebody there. They'll have the whole thing, but he will be in the studio. Did not know if he was going to be, this was as of yesterday, did not know what the exact plans were for JJ on Friday. Okay. They are planning to do, I think, the same thing with Daniels on next Monday. It's just, to me, like we said earlier, it's just interesting that why is it set for that day when the league meetings are going on? That's like the first big day of the league meetings, and your decision makers aren't there. It'll be interesting to see who, if any, bolts out of the league meeting, because the league it's not like they're that far away. They're in Orlando,
right?
And none of these people take airlines anymore. They're all on freaking private jets. So they can get over there in an hour and back. Go to the workout and be back in an hour. So
Keenan Allen said he took a private jet to Alice Hall for that meeting on Saturday, the press conference. It's the first time I've been on a private jet. It was pretty cool.
We didn't do that shit when I was there.
Poor Greg, I had to lug around a 16mm projector on.
No, I mean, not once did Jerry get on a private plane as a GM. Now it's in every GM's contract.
Yeah.
The use of because it's like standard. Everybody's doing it. You just do a corporate deal with NetJets or Wheels Up or something like that, and you're using them all the time. But hell, we never did that. I think the first time I saw them use a private jet was in the coaching search with Nagy, the year they hired Nagy. When they showed him getting off a private jet.
I remember that image. Yeah.
They didn't do that when we were there. Because I remember Jerry and I were out at the East-West game, and it was in San Francisco. And he interviewed a couple people that names have never been put out for this is when we hired Lovey, so this is 04. And out when we were at the East-West, and I sat in on a good part of one of those interviews. And then Jerry had, flew commercial to Baton Rouge and stayed at Nick Saban's house, because Nick and Jerry, worked together on the Syracuse staff a gazillion years ago. And they're real good friends. And so nobody knew Jerry was at Saban's house. And he was, at that point, he was the head coach at LSU. We went to Alabama. And then the following year, he went to Miami. But, you didn't have social media. Nobody knew anything. And we weren't flying private.
Times have changed.
Yes, they have.
Florida Bears fans wants to sneak one in. He asks, does Greg think that the Bears already know who they are picking? Unforeseen problems with the interviews and pro days, get that out of the way. But it's pretty much a lock. They're thinking Caleb.
I think, put it this way, it's a surprise if it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, unless you get a Peyton Manning situation, a medical situation comes up. Now, I said this to somebody the other day. And if I'm Caleb is the only guy in the history of the combine, so that goes back to January 1985, that's never had a medical at the combine, that just said, screw you, I'm not doing it. Okay. So sooner or later, I guess you always got to have a first, right? So theoretically, he set himself up to maybe have to go through now 4 or 5 different medicals at 4 or 5 different facilities. And I thought, if he was smart, he'd do one, get the teams involved to sign off on the people who do, and you got to have internal doctor because you got to have blood work done and do an EKG and that stuff, and then the orthopedic exam, and just have something done out in LA by a group of doctors, a couple of doctors that the other teams sign off on and say, okay, we'll trust that opinion and go from there. Then he's only got to do it once, and it goes to the teams that he wants it to go to. Now, yeah, I'm guessing here, but it kind of makes sense.
Yes. Bears and Cigar says, what if Caleb demands a trade? I don't think that's a far-fetched, scenario there, because he does appear to be very, his team, he and his team appear to be very, I don't know what the word is, but they want what they want, controlling. There you go. And so I wouldn't at all be surprised if Caleb says, pulled the what Peter King said last week with the Manning and
right. No, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it hasn't happened yet. I did talk to, again, a chat conversation with a guy that used to be the beat writer for Washington, for the Washington Post. Now he's in another league city. And I said, and the guy's originally a Buffalo guy. That's how I know him. I said, do you think they're willing to trade that pick? But I mean, he goes, yeah, I still talk to, the other guys on the beat and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he goes, first of all, the team has been very mum. This new group hasn't let out anything. But he said the general feeling is that they're set knowing that we got number 2. So it's who we're taking at number 2. Now, if they have tried to trade, that would obviously be conversations they had with the Bears, but the Bears let their quarterback go, and I just can't think that Ryan would set himself up for that unless something drastically went wrong. And he just said, we felt this was the guy, be it Jaden Daniels or whatever, we thought that long-term, this guy was the better guy for our team. But what's going to happen. That's going to be comparison the rest of their career.
That's, by the way,
that's betting your career. I mean, what it gets down to.
Yeah. All right, let's pull the plug on this one. Almost 2 hours, Greg.
Well, not quite. We're about an hour 50.
You want to know?
Do I get overtime?
No. I'm
not coughing anymore.
No, you're doing great.
I mean, 2 weeks in a row, I haven't coughed on there.
I'm glad you're going to be back in the gym here. So,
so do I. It kind of scares me because, my breathing isn't the best, but it is what it is. I got to deal with what I got to deal with.
Exactly. Well, good luck with that workout, and we will see you here next Tuesday, unless some big news happens. I'm going to let you go.
I can always pop on. The only time, if there was news, Easter weekend,
mm-hmm.
I got to drive up to Minnesota again and pick up my stepdaughter and move her back here. So nothing's going to happen Easter weekend. It's seldom does. So,
yeah, I'm with you. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for those of you who joined us live and those watching on demand. We appreciate you as well. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the Ballroom Network on YouTube. Tonight, it's the premiere of South Burbs Hitman, and Ryan Lee, who is the in-stadium host for the Chicago White Sox. He is the guest. And then we've got plenty of live football programming the rest of the week, and hockey and more baseball. So the Barroom Network is one of your choices for sports news, opinion, and analysis.
I got one last thing to say.
Okay.
I'm a big Caleb Williams fan now.
Me too.
About to play good. That's all I can say.
That's right. I love that. Perfect ending. Goodbye, everybody.
See you later.